What if Ben 10 was in Demon Slayer? How would each version of Ben change the story? After all, our hero in each of his versions has a different Omnitrix with different aliens and functions. That's exactly why we'll start with Ben in his classic version, and as the video goes on, we'll upgrade the hero who has saved the universe thousands of times. And we should remember that in this version, even though Ben has some very powerful aliens, there isn't an alien capable of recreating the universe in this version of the Omnitrix. That being said, it's even more interesting for us to explore since we'll have a very interesting level of power balancing. But after all, how did Ben 10 end up in Demon Slayer? Before I tell you, get comfortable with your popcorn in hand and leave your powerful like on the video so you can see more videos like this. And legend has it that only subscribers to the channel will have an Omnitrix. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel with the notification bell on, just to be sure. That way you join the otaku culture community, the biggest in Brazil. And let's start by looking at the setting of classic Ben 10. In this setting, Ben was fighting against a very powerful enemy who had a galactic device, a dimensional teleportation weapon. So, he ends up getting hit while he was in his four-arms form, at the same time that Inosuke was in trouble. In the hand of the Spider Demon Father, Ben arrives and saves him with a mega punch, throwing the Spider Demon Father an incredible distance away. Inosuke thinks Ben is another Oni, and the same goes for Tomioka, who, just as he was about to strike Ben, sees him return to his human form, revealing himself to be just a boy. Tomioka doesn't sense an Oni scent on Ben, nor does he see any Oni features in him. And as soon as he gets distracted, the Spider Oni comes back to attack them, but Tomioka defeats it easily. Tomioka asks, how did a child like Ben become an Oni? But Ben explains that actually he's a superhero and basically has powers that come from his watch, allowing him to transform into any alien. Just with this brief explanation, it totally confuses our heroes, who never even considered the possibility of life beyond Earth, or equipment that advanced either. Tomioka tells Ben to stay with Inosuke, but Ben refuses and wants to help in the fight against the Onis, who, to him, are aliens. Tomioka moves ahead to meet Tanjiro, who was having trouble fighting Rui. At this point, he would have already awakened his Hinokami Kagura, and Rui was about to put his head back in place until Tomioka arrived and cut it off. Look, Ben in this version doesn't have a watch with infinite charge or a long charging time. Here, his watch is still very limited, so it needs some time to recharge. Because of that, he wouldn't be able to use any watch. And at the Hashira meeting this time, Ben is there, and after a long conversation, both sides understand in theory what happened. Ben understands what the Onis are and how he ended up in that world, while the hunters understand about Ben's powers and how he got there. Buyashiki tells Ben to join forces with the Corps to go after Muzan. After all, Muzan might know an Oni capable of sending Ben back to his home. Since there are several Oni with absurd powers scattered around the world, maybe one of them can help him, so Ben needs to cooperate with the hunters. Soon, leaving with Rengoku and the others on the Mugen train, they are caught in Enmu's Kekijutsu, and when they wake up, Rengoku quickly protects the civilians. With Ben's help, he transforms into flames and incinerates Enmu's tentacles. While controlling his fire powers, Tanjiro and Inosuke set out to decapitate Enmu, whom Tanjiro ultimately defeats, causing the train to derail, and with that, the Upper Moon 3 appears. And once again, Ben's watch runs out of power, making it impossible for him to fight alongside Rengoku. The fight between Akaza and Rengoku is frantic until before the climax of the battle, Ben transforms into an alien that Akaza would certainly hate to deal with. I'm talking about Diamond Head. Ben is simply very skilled with this alien, so much so that he has vast combat experience with it. Akaza is impressed to see Ben's powers during the fight. Akaza and Rengoku prove to be very fast for Ben, but he manages to keep up just barely, making the battle difficult for Akaza. He creates huge diamond barriers that protect Rengoku from Akaza's attacks and allow Rengoku to launch surprise attacks against the Oni. Akaza, realizing how annoying Ben was, attacks him mercilessly in the blink of an eye, finally completely destroying Ben's alien form. Rengoku bursts into flames thinking that Ben had died and charges at Akaza with his purgatory technique, heading towards Akaza with a huge dragon of flames. As the sun rises, Akaza pierces Rengoku's chest, but Rengoku holds him with all his strength to burn him against the sun. But Akaza breaks free to escape until a huge barrier appears in front of Akaza. It was none other than Ben's diamond barrier, who had regenerated, and by the time Akaza manages to destroy the diamond barrier, it's already too late. Akaza ends up being disintegrated by the sun thanks to Ben 10's help. But this mission came at a cost, Rengoku's life, who dies content knowing that Ben is helping him in the mission against the Onis. Ben, unfortunately, is frustrated for not being able to save Rengoku, and heading to the entertainment district, Ben goes to help with the anime hunt. Esteioso manages to transform into the beast and sniff out the scent of the Oni. Thus he finds Daki, who this time is not only fighting against Tanjiro but also with the other hunters, right from the start. All of this is thanks to the beast alien, and when she is decapitated, Gyutaro appears and attacks our heroes. And a small, medium, or maybe big detail happens. Ben drains his watch and returns to his human form. And here, my friends, we have a problem. Ben doesn't know how to use any breathing style and he has no training for it. He's easy prey for the demons, but Zu and Tanjiro protect him at all costs from Gyutaro's attacks, while Daki faces Zenitsu and Inosuke. And when finally our hero's watch recharges, he transforms into the big guy. And this alien is capable of literally swallowing anything and turning digested objects into explosive energy spheres. And then Ben, in his big guy form, eats the debris around him. And when Gyutaro was distracted, he gets hit by a mega energy ball, which makes him fall, giving a chance for a counterattack. Obviously, he wouldn't be defeated that easily. But when he turns to grab his scythe-shaped knives, they had disappeared. Yes, my friends, Gluto ate them. And this surprises Gyutaro, while Ziyu, with this extremely strange attitude, manages to create an opening against Gyutaro, whose head is cut off, while Tanjiro and Ziyu hold Gyutaro down. Without the sickles and without his head, Glutton appears in front of Daki, slicing fabrics and digests them right in front of her, while Daki finds this extremely disgusting, horrible, and horrendous. But as she tears her fabrics to get rid of Glutton, she gets hit with a huge energy ball in the face just to teach her a lesson, and she goes flying off the roof. Until Zenitsu finally catches her off guard and cuts off her head, ultimately defeating both demons. This time, Ben was truly a hero, helping not only to defeat Gyutaro and Daki, but also saving him from losing his arm. However, Tanjiro does not awaken his Demon Slayer mark, so will he be able to awaken it? Look, the chance for this to happen is here in the Swordsmith village, where Tanjiro would be left out of the mission. But what about Mitsuri and Muchiru? What would happen to them? Notice that Tanjiro doesn't go there to get his new sword, which broke during the battle against the demon siblings. But Ben would go, precisely because Ziyu notices that he, in his human form, is useless and only gets in the way, considering teaching him breathing techniques so he won't be a burden. So Ben would go there and be tutored by Mitsuri until Gyomei returned from his mission to teach him the breathing of peace. Imagine how crazy it would be for Ben to learn the Demon Slayer breathing techniques, and imagine the aliens using them. It would be insane. Arriving at the village, while he was resting in his room, the village would be attacked by Gyoku and Rantengo's demon fish. They would appear in Ben's room. But sensing the smell of the Oni, Muchiru appears and decapitates it. This causes his clones to appear until the pleasure clone kicks him out of the room, sending him directly into a battle against Gyoku, the Upper Moon 5. And since Mitsuri is still in the village, she arrives in time to help Ben deal with Rantengo's clones. And we should also remember that Genya was there to provide support. So, Ben transforms once again, hoping to turn into the flames to burn all those Onis, which unfortunately doesn't happen since Ben in this version of the Omnitrix doesn't have control. Then the watch makes him turn into a random alien, and that alien is Cannonbolt. In my opinion, this alien is one of the coolest. But comment below, do you say Cannonbolt or Cannonball? Anyway, he quickly runs over Rantengo's clones. The clones try everything to hit Ben, but he rolls quickly. They try to hit him with lightning and he just keeps rolling, and the Sadness clone manages to touch Ben. But even though his spear is very strong, Cannonbolt's shell is even stronger and protects him from the spear, which ends up breaking. The Onis in shock give Mitsuri an opening, so she, with her love-breathing and whip sword, decapitates the Onis in a single spin while Mitsuri searches for the mini Rantengo. Ben decides to go help Muthiro, who is in trouble against Gyoko. By this point, he would have been poisoned for protecting the two blacksmiths who were there. And when Ben arrives spinning like a cannonball, Gyoko immediately notices the noise he makes and launches spikes at him. But, as I already said, the cannonball shell is tough and that doesn't affect him. When Ben gets close, he's caught in Gyoko's water prison and his watch is drained. And now, will Muthiro, without the Hunter's Mark, be able to help Ben? Look, Gyoko is extremely fast and without the Hunter's Mark, Muthiro can't keep up with his speed. Besides, Ben can't transform right now and can't get out of Gyoko's prison. While Muthiro does everything he can to match Gyoko, Ben tries to break free from his prison of water until, almost out of breath, his watch recharges. And it didn't matter which alien, any of them would be useful in that situation. That's what Ben knew. And as he transforms, XLR-8 appears. This extremely fast alien capable of creating tornadoes while running. So, Ben uses XLR-80's quick movements to spin and create sharp winds that break through the water barrier. Breaking free and heading toward Gyoko, hitting the Oni quickly without giving him a chance to escape or transform, which makes him really angry. In the end, Gyoko is decapitated by Muthiro, who takes advantage of this opening. And I must tell you that if Gyoko had perhaps entered his fish form, Muthiro, without the mark, probably wouldn't have been able to get an opening like that. Even with Ben's help, then Ben grabs his sword with Haganezuka, who was right there, and runs toward Mitsuri. And when he gets there, he sees impressive giant wooden dragons going all out against Mitsuri. When he was about to help, his watch once again runs out of power, leaving her in trouble. And unfortunately, Ben didn't have time to train his breathing technique. He barely knows how to use it. Mitsuri and Geira are holding on quite well against Rantengo, or rather Zorakuten, and while the insane attacks didn't stop, Mitsuri was gradually getting tired. Until, in the end, when everything seemed lost and Mitsuri was about to be swallowed by the wooden dragon, he finally appears. Chamas, the most radical alien from Ben 10. He sets the wooden dragons on fire, saving Mitsuri, and soon sets the others on fire as well. While Ben takes care of Zorakuten Mitsuri and they look for the mini Rantengo, Ben easily deals with Zorakuten, dodging his ruthless attacks and easily burning all his dragons. Until finally, Mitsuri manages to decapitate the original clone of Rantengo and save the day. At this point, Muzan becomes extremely irritated with the boy who has the Omnitrix, but realizes that it's only thanks to the watch that Ben has those powers. So Muzan wants to get it for himself. Heading towards the corporation, he finally arrives at Kagaya's mansion and pulls everyone into the Infinity Castle. And even with this line changing, Muzan would still be poisoned by Tamayo, staying in his cocoon while the other fights happen. And up to this point, Ziyu is still at the corporation, since he hasn't lost his arm and hasn't thought about retiring. And he would help the Hashiras in the fight against Kokushibo, the Upper Moon 1, alongside Tanjiro, who wouldn't face Akaza, the Upper Moon 3. After all, he had been defeated by Ben. And here, Tomioka, Shinobu, and Ben would face Duma, who would soon have even more trouble with the arrival of Inosuke and Kanao. And although Duma proved to be very strong, Ben manages to show himself to be incredible. A match for his Kekijutsu by using Shamas again. A perfect counter to his Ice Kekijutsu, giving several openings for the hunters to decapitate him. However, Duma is incredibly fast, surpassing the speed of everyone present. However, Shinobu, with the help of Tomioka and Ben, manages to hold Duma off until reinforcements arrive. Kanao and Inosuke seriously irritate Duma, who is unable to use his Kekijutsu so far because of Ben. Taking advantage of an opening, Shinobu manages to inject her poison into Duma until Kanao is finally able to finish him off, once and for all. The hunters head toward Muzan, but end up meeting the other Hashiras who were still fighting against Kokushibo. By this time, Genya and Mutiru had already died. Ben, realizing this, loses control, and quickly when his watch regains power, he transforms into 4 arms and charges toward Kokushibo, who swiftly cuts off 2 of his 4 arms. The Hashiras are impressed by Kokushibo's speed and strength, but before he could kill him, Zui stops him and the other Hashiras, exhausted, join the battle. And we should remember that the Omnitrix in this version is still incomplete. Therefore, when returning to his human form, Ben would feel all the pain of having lost 2 of his 4 arms in the alien form and becomes immobilized. While the Hashiras, with the help of Tanjiro Kanao and Inosuke, hold back Kokushibo, the watch starts recharging again. And with excruciating pain, Ben transforms into cannonbolts, spinning toward Kokushibo and throwing him far away. And here, in the midst of the battle, Tanjiro would awaken his mark, followed by Gyome, Gyu, and Sanemi. And even though Ben deals with Kokushibo's relentless attacks, the Oni proves to be very strong. But with the cavalry there, he would eventually be overpowered, giving an opening to be decapitated by none other than Gyome, the strongest Hashira. And heading towards Muzan, the hunters have an epic battle with the Oni, who wants to have Ben's watch and not devour Nezuko. After all, she wasn't exposed to a situation where she could walk under sunlight, therefore that discovery wouldn't be possible. With Muzan facing the hunters, Ben transforms this time into a creepy alien, the same one you used to be terrified of when you saw him. As Ghost Freak, Ben becomes intangible to Muzan's attacks and can even possess his body, giving the hunters an opening to attack and decapitate him. However, Muzan's resistance is insane and he manages to expel Ben from his body, and Ben's watch runs out of power again at the worst possible moment when the Demon King was really close to him. But this time, Ben knows the basics of breathing techniques. By using the basics of his breathing technique, he quickly manages to escape a fatal attack from Muzan. After all, Muzan would greatly underestimate him. The Hashiras would protect him until he managed to turn into an alien capable of completely frying Muzan. Until finally, after recharging, Ben transforms. And, my friends, if you thought he was going to turn into some standard alien, forget it, because the Omnitrix turned him into the giant. Precisely because this random function is activated, Ben turned into a mega alien who grabs Muzan by the hands and laughs in his face. When finally we have a vast view of the sun rising on the other side. And we should remember that the giant is so absurd that he managed to throw Vilgax off a planet. That's right, he literally expelled Vilgax from a planet's orbit. And why would it be any different here? Why couldn't he throw Muzan directly into the sun? That's exactly what he does, finally bringing about the defeat of the king of the Onis, Kibutsuji Muzan. In the end, a portal appears for Ben to return home, with his grandfather and his cousin waiting for him, all thanks to a device created by the plumbers. Now we'll see how Ben, as a teenager with his new alien-powered Omnitrix, will deal with the Onis. Would he be able to defeat Muzan with his new aliens? For sure, he would help a lot. After all, he has them. From aliens that can become intangible and freeze their enemies' bodies to Alien X, who can recreate the entire universe. But will Alien X really be necessary in this story? Besides, in order for him to use this alien, he needs the approval of his 2 personalities, Serena and Bellicus. So, will that happen? Keep watching until the end to find out. And I must say that Ben, in this version, has the master control of the Omnitrix, being able to choose which alien to transform into. Besides that, this Omnitrix has almost no recharge time, so he doesn't need to wait for his watch to recharge, unlike the classic version. So, how did Ben 10 from Alien Force end up in Demon Slayer? And while Ben was on an adventure with Gwen and Kevin fighting a powerful enemy in the Nullifier, this enemy had a powerful dimensional weapon that fires at Ben and sends him to another dimension, or rather, to another universe, the universe of Demon Slayer, and Ben appears. While Tanjiro was about to face Rui and seeing someone in trouble, Ben quickly decides to act, transforming into Jetray. And this alien, my friends, has hyperspace speed. There's no way Rui could hit him with his webs. Even though he tries, when he gets an opportunity, Ben uses his laser beams to completely fry every cell of Rui, finally, after saving Tanjiro before Tomioka arrives and returning to his human form, Ben talks to Tanjiro and tries to find out where on earth Tanjiro is. Obviously, you would think Ben is an Oni, but he doesn't smell like one and doesn't seem dangerous or evil. With the arrival of the Hashiras, Ben finds out what the Onis are and deduces a few things. He realizes that he's in another universe and needs to get back home as soon as possible. Tomioka and Shinobu say that Muzan might be able to help him. After all, he has knowledge of all the Onis that exist, and each Oni has unique powers. So, one of them must be able to make Ben return to his home, whether by good means or by force. And by joining the Oni Hunters Corps, Ben, together with Tanjiro and his friends, soon board the train with Rengoku, the Flame Hashira, and when Onis appear on the train, Rengoku quickly defeats them. However, our heroes fall under Enmu's Kekijutsu, or Lower Moon 1. And when they wake up, they need to protect the train's passengers from Enmu, who has merged with the train and is attacking everyone. Ben, to help the hunters, transforms into Wildvine. This alien is insane because he's a mixed version and is called Wildvine, which are Ben's aliens. 10 Classic, containing both powers of the two aliens and helping Rengoku incinerate Enmu's tentacles, Ben heads toward the Oni's neck with Tanjiro and Inosuke. And when they come across Enmu, Ben gives Tanjiro the opportunity to decapitate his neck, burning all of Enmu's tentacles. As soon as Enmu's neck is cut, the train derails. But quickly Ben, using his Will-o'-the-Wisp seeds which grow instantly, manages to hold the train and keep everyone safe. And when the house appears, the Upper Moon 3 shows up. Rengoku faces the powerful Oni alone at first, but Ben still decides to help Rengoku. And the question now is, will Ben 10 be able to save Rengoku from his imminent death against the house? Well,
ainda transformado no fogo fato.
Ben fights with all his strength against Oni. But this alien is not able to keep up with the speed of the hunters or even some of the Onis, especially Akaza, the Upper Moon 3. Therefore, with even the slightest chance, Akaza crushes the Will-o'-the-Wisp with insane blows. However, this alien has the ability to regenerate and quickly returns to the fight, spreading its seeds across the battlefield. He manages to slow down Akaza's speed, but it's still not enough to stop the Oni and give Rengoku a chance to decapitate him. So Ben decides to use another strategy to stop Akaza. This time he transforms into Friagem, and as Akaza heads toward Ben again, he's surprised by this alien version of Ben. Besides becoming intangible to attacks at the same time, when an object or enemy passes through him, he can freeze them, and that's exactly what Ben does. Now Rengoku has a chance to decapitate the Oni, but it still won't be that easy. Akaza breaks free and gets furious, going after the heroes. However, thanks to Ben, who was helping Rengoku in the battle, this fight dragged on for too long. For Akaza, the sun was already rising, and desperate, Akaza tries to escape but is stopped by a huge wall of ice created by Friagem. And this is a decisive factor because at this moment, Rengoku catches Akaza off guard, aiming at his limbs and cutting off his legs and arms. Next, Ben freezes the Oni's body, who would obviously break free, but as soon as he does, it's already too late. Akaza loses the battle, being disintegrated by the sun, and thus, Rengoku survives the battle and Akaza is defeated, all thanks to Ben 10. Heading to the entertainment district with Uzui, Ben transforms into Echo to use his multiple clones and search for Daki. And as soon as he finds her with Tanjiro, the two fight against the Oni, and this time, by creating powerful sound waves against the Oni, Tanjiro has the opportunity to decapitate her, then Gyutaro appears. By a stroke of luck, he targets Echo's clones, saving Tanjiro and Ben's original clone from being poisoned by the Oni. With Uzui and the others arriving, an epic battle takes place, but they have to deal with two incredibly fast and strong Onis. Ben knows that the best alien for this job would be a diamond, since it could protect the hunters from both Daki's fabrics and Gyutaro's poisons. And that's exactly what he does, making the fight much easier for the hunters by protecting them with diamond walls and at the same time counter-attacking with powerful diamond spikes. In the end, he corners them, giving the hunters a chance to decapitate the Upper Moons, Gyutaro, and Daki, all thanks to Ben 10. Uzui would decapitate Gyutaro without losing his arm, so he wouldn't think about retiring and would remain in the Hunter's Corps. And this situation is also perfect for Tanjiro to be able to decapitate Daki and even unlock his Hunter's Mark since he's in the right conditions. For such a feat, however, Tanjiro would still need to go to the village to fix his sword, and Ben would decide to go along to accompany him. Once they arrive, Gyoko's demons. And while Ben was talking with Mutyuro and Tanjiro in his room, Rantengo appears, but is quickly decapitated by Mutyuro. The Mist Hashira until the Joy clone appears and blows Mutyuro away with a powerful gust of wind. And going after our heroes, the Anger clone unleashes powerful lightning bolts against them. However, Ben transformed into this... What? Which is chromatic. This alien is capable of absorbing all energy for itself, and by absorbing the lightning and thunder, Ben has the alien fully recharged. And when that happens, chromatic can unleash even more powerful laser beams, which have insane speed. Therefore, none of the Oni that were there are able to dodge chromatic's lasers quickly. Ben defeats Rantengo's clones by being fast and precise. However, Ben didn't destroy every cell of the Oni, allowing the clones to regenerate and transform into Zorakuten with his countless wooden clones. Zorakuten attacks our heroes mercilessly, but thanks to Chromatic's lasers, which completely tear apart Zorakuten's dragons and keep him busy. Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Genya can go after the mini Rantengo to decapitate him, finally defeating the Oni. And here things move faster than in the original story thanks to Ben. So Mitsuri was still on her way to the battle against Zorakuten, and the hunters are still able to go after Muchiru, who, when they find him, would be trapped in Gyoku's water prison. But as soon as he is freed by Tanjiro, the hunters now fight against Gyoku, who uses his hybrid fish form, quickly charging at our hunters. Muchiru and Tanjiro activate their marks during the battle and defeat the Oni without Ben needing to do much. Mitsuri. Here she only helped the villagers, not fighting against Zorakuten, unlocking her mark at this point. While the Hashiras were training to unlock their marks, Muzan becomes furious. However, he really wants Ben's watch for himself, so he decides to go to the Hunters Corporation. And upon arriving there, he takes everyone to the Infinity Castle, making each hunter face their respective opponent. Meanwhile, Shinobu, Rengoku, and Ben fight against Duma, the Upper Moon 2. In another room, Sanemi, Mutiru, and Tomioka are fighting against Upper Moon 1. But what about Tanjiro? Where is he? You see, Tanjiro is with Obanai and Mitsuri fighting against Nakimi, the substitute Upper Moon 4. Will Ben be able to save all the Hashiras from a terrible death in the Infinity Castle? After all, many Hashiras died even before the fight against Muzan. So, what will happen? Let's see. In the fight against Duma, Ben uses Will-o'-the-Wisp to create powerful roots in order to block and immobilize Duma. However, Upper Moon 2 is even faster than the house, which was already incredibly fast, but Ben can burn Duma's ice. However, when Duma uses his most powerful technique, creating ice statues, Ben's Will-o'-the-Wisp alien doesn't have the same firepower as Flames, the classic Ben's alien. So Ben decides to rely on pure brute strength. Ben transforms into Humongosaur, and growing even bigger, Humongosaur becomes stronger, not only gaining more strength but also becoming more resistant. He destroys the ice that Duma creates using sheer strength, and he takes down the Oni's ice statues by force. And with the arrival of reinforcements Kanao and Inosuke, Duma would have to use his full power against the hunters, and with his immense speed and strength, Duma overwhelms Ben in his Humongosaur form. Realizing that the hunters are now at a disadvantage, Ben transforms into NRG, and stepping out of his containment armor, Ben simply heats up. So much so that even the extremely powerful ice created by Duma is melted. In an instant, the Oni is impressed and enraged and charging at Ben Duma. When he touches this powerful alien, he gets fried, or rather melted. That's exactly what you heard. It has an absurd temperature and a heat similar to pure lava. Taking advantage of the opening, Ben uses a powerful attack to melt and disintegrate every cell of Duma completely. Heading toward Muzan, Ben transforms into Jet Ray to find Muzan as soon as possible, but he ends up passing through the room where the hunters were fighting against Kokushibo, the Upper Moon One. At this point, he had already killed Mutsuru and Genya, and Ben entered the battle to support the hunters. Kokushibo is not able to keep up with Ben's laser beams or even his hyperspace speed, and in the end, his head is cut off by Gyomei. The strongest Hashira, Tanjiro, and the others end up finding Muzan, and an epic battle takes place with everyone using their powers to the fullest and standing their ground until the end, no matter the cost. And even though Ben has hyperspace speed in his Jet Ray form, Muzan proves to be extremely clever, and by aiming his whips at strategic points, he ends up hitting Ben since Muzan's whips were in his path. Even so, Ben doesn't give up. He transforms into Heat Blast again. To burn Muzan, however, the King of Demons is much more resistant than Ben imagined. Muzan tears Ben apart while still dealing with the other Hashiras. After regenerating, Ben changes his tactics again and transforms into Echo, splitting and multiplying himself. However, despite his huge number of clones, Muzan still stands firm against the sonic screams, and with the swing of his whips once again destroys all of Ben's clones. The Hashiras start to panic since none of Ben's aliens are able to hold Muzan back. But why can't Ben transform into NRG? But look, Ben knows NRG's abilities, see? And he also knows the consequences of using this alien near his allies. NRG inside his armor is extremely slow and limited, unable to use his full power. However, outside the armor, he could kill his allies. This is considering that the alien emits a lot of radiation, exposing the Hashiras who were with him in the battle against Duma, and once again the radiation, the consequences would be death. And even knowing that, instead of defeating Muzan, Ben would think of another way to defeat him. And the solution he found was to use his most powerful alien. That way, he could not only defeat Muzan, but also return to his universe. Ben finally transforms into the long-awaited Alien X, the Celestial Sapien. Ben convinces Selena and Bellicus to give him full access to Alien X, considering that if they don't agree, they would never be able to see their universe again. And that arguing at home is 10 times better. Yes, most of the arguments to convince those two are just like that. And finally, with access to Alien X Ben. For all of Muzan's whips, simply with one hand. Finally, at insane speed, he smashes Muzan with a series of blows, just for fun. Then, he literally creates a black hole that sucks in Muzan and destroys every cell of the King of the Oni, this absurdity. Finally, Ben restores everything that was destroyed in the battle, from the Buyashiki mansion to the Swordsmith village. And having the power of the universe in his hands, he brings back to life those who died at the hands of the terrible Oni. Thus, Motiru, Genya, and the other Hashiras who died in the process of waiting. While Ben was convincing Selena and Bericus to give him full control of Alien X, they are revived. In the end, Ben says goodbye and creates a portal to return home. Once again, Ben proved himself a hero, saving everyone from the hands of the terrible Onus. This Ben from Alien Force is insane, but it can get even better. Look, Ben has several extremely powerful aliens, with many of them surpassing the speed of light or even being able to rebuild the universe. But what if he could transform these aliens into their ultimate version? In other words, take their power and abilities to the next level. And that's exactly what Ben's Omnitrix in Alien Supremacy is capable of doing. So, I don't need to say that he would easily be able to defeat even the higher ranked Onis, but which aliens would Ben have to use in their ultimate form to defeat the Onis? And the most interesting question among all of these is, who would Ben 10 be able to save in this story, and what would change in the story of Demon Slayer? Look, in another battle against Vilgax, his arch enemy, Vilgax was planning to go after the Omnitrix in other dimensions since he was never able to come out victorious. Against the Ben from this dimension, however, Vilgax uses his dimensional weapon to teleport Ben to another dimension, or better yet, to the universe of Demon Slayer. And during Tanjiro's fight against Rui, where Tanjiro would be in trouble because he was out of strength due to using the Hinokami Kagura, Ben quickly transforms into Jet Ray, an alien capable of flying and moving at the speed of light, even faster than lightning. So, When Rui's threads were about to hit Tanjiro, Ben quickly cuts his bloody threads with a wave of lightning, and transforming into pure electricity, he unleashes a huge amount of lightning on Rui, capable of literally frying the Oni, disintegrating him completely. And notice that Ben wouldn't need a Nichirin and has aliens that are capable of reducing the Onis to dust. Ben tries to understand where he is, thinking he was sent to another part of Earth, seeing the Onis as aliens. However, his Omnitrix doesn't detect any signal from the plumbers or his friends, which leads Ben to conclude that he's in another universe. And when Tomioka arrives, he takes Tanjiro and Ben to the base of the Oni hunters. There, they discuss Nezuko, and Ben tells Buyashiki his would need to find Muzan, a being who knows all the Onis, each Oni with unique abilities. One of them should be able to send him back, right? And before you say that Ben could use Alien X to go back home, after all, in this version, he has full control of the Omnitrix. For some reason, and for the sake of this story, Alien X would be locked. So, Ben would team up with the Oni Hunters Corps and setting out with Tanjiro and his friends to help Rengoku on the Mugen train. They fall under Enmu's Kekijutsu, but quickly Ben's Omnitrix wakes him up since it can detect danger and protect its user. Then with a slight shock, Ben wakes up from his deep sleep, and to wake up the others, he transforms into an aquatic threat, one capable of controlling and spraying water. He quickly wakes up the hunters with jets of water and they run toward Enmu, while Ben helps protect the train cars alongside Rengoku. When Tanjiro decapitates Enmu, the train derails and the house appears, Upper Moon 3. And the question that remains here is whether Ben 10 will be able to help Rengoku escape his imminent death, or better yet, if he is capable of defeating Akaza. Which Ben alien would fulfill the role of defeating the demon? What would the battle between Akaza, Rengoku, and Ben 10 be like? Watch. Obviously, the aquatic threat wouldn't be a match for Akaza, so Ben would have to use another alien. And that's when, by observing the battle between Rengoku and Akaza, Ben would decide to surround the battlefield with sound waves so massive that Akaza wouldn't be able to escape. For that, he would transform into Echo Echo, and by splitting and multiplying, Ben causes a huge sound explosion, but Akaza is able to withstand it easily. And as we know, Upper Moon 3 has supersonic speed, and in an instant, he defeats all of Echo Echo's clones. So what does Ben do? You probably already know the answer. He decides to increase the destructive power of his sound attacks by transforming into Ultimate Echo Echo. And in this state, Ben is able to fly at insane speed and also has a sound power so destructive that it was able to break through Kevin 11's defenses in his form fused with Ben's strongest aliens. So when he surrounds the house with his sound discs, he creates such massive and destructive power that the Oni can barely get out of place, or rather, can barely move. And when the sun rises, the house is unable to escape, thus suffering its defeat, and so Rengoku survives and Muzan loses one of his favorite Onis, already in the entertainment district. When the hunters need to locate Daki, Ben quickly transforms into the beast to sense and detect the smell of Oni. But Daki, however, since Muzan warned her about Ben, the Oni would mask her scent as much as she could. Then Ben would transform into the ultimate beast, being able to sense and detect hidden scents from thousands of long kilometers away, locating Daki. And as soon as the hunters decapitate, the Oni Gyutaro appears, launching powerful poisons at the hunters, hitting and poisoning them. Ben returns to his normal form, since the Omnitrix is capable of protecting the user's body even when Ben's aliens are completely disintegrated. And which alien would Ben use to defeat Gyutaro and Daki? Notice that Gyutaro and Daki need to have their heads cut off simultaneously, but the hunters don't know that yet. So Ben transforms into Cannonbolt, who strikes Daki hard, while Tanjiro and Uzui deal with Gyutaro. But once they decapitate Daki, they realize once again that both demons need to be defeated simultaneously, and the most effective strategy is to corner them. So to avoid further injuries from Gyutaro's poison, Ben transforms into Ultimate Cannon Bolt, being able to easily withstand the Oni's poisons and roll over Daki's fabrics, hitting the Oni and throwing it. Where to was Gyutaro's battle against the hunters happening? And in a series of quick moves, Ben blocks and overcomes Gyutaro's poisons, throwing him to where Daki was. And so the hunters managed to surround the Oni siblings and decapitate them. And notice how the fight was quicker and easier. Uzui wouldn't lose his arm or even be poisoned by Gyutaro, remaining in the hunter's core. And Tanjiro, besides not damaging his sword against Gyutaro and having no reason to go to the Swordsmith village, also wouldn't awaken his Demon Slayer mark. So what would Mitsuri Muchiro's situation be like in the Swordsmith village? Since it was only thanks to Tanjiro that the Demon Slayers managed to save the village and survive against the Upper Moons? Note that Uzui, as a way to reward Ben for his help, would tell him to go to the hot springs in the Swordsmith village, and when he gets there, Ben would run into the attack. The Swordsmith village, where Gyoku Upper Moon 5 invaded the village with his Demon Fish, and Rantengo Upper Moon 4, appears in his room while Ben was talking to Mutiro, and when Mutiro decapitates Rantengo, Oni activates his Kekijutsu and creates clones of himself. At that moment, Ben transforms into the Spider Monkey, so that with his webs he can gather the clones in one place for Mutiro to decapitate them. Since he thought this situation would be similar to the battle he had in the Entertainment District against Gyutaro and Daki. However, when Ben charges at the Joy Clone, he is blown out of the room by a strong gust of wind. And when he finally lands on the ground, he comes face to face with Yoku, the Upper Moon 5. Faced with this powerful Oni, Ben can't land any hits on him since he always teleports from one vase to another. Thanks to the agility of the Spider Monkey, Ben manages to dodge the poisonous spikes spat out by Gyoku's attack. But when Oni traps him in his water prison, Ben would need to get stronger to break free. And that's when he transforms into the ultimate Spider Monkey, blasting the water prison apart with his intense fury. When Gyoku throws his octopus tentacles at Ben, he counters them with all his powerful punches and the fish summoned by Gyoku
São colocados em uma enorme...
Web stops his attacks against Ben. However, it's still not enough to defeat Oni. Knowing this, Ben transforms into Jetray, an alien capable of surpassing the speed of light and disintegrating Gyoku with his laser beams. Gyoku, being clever, uses his hybrid fish transformation, becoming even stronger and faster. However, he doesn't even come close to Jetray's speed. And he is outmatched by Ben, who fires powerful lasers at Oni and disintegrates him just as he returns to the battle against Upper Moon 4. Ben realizes that the hunters are having a lot of trouble decapitating Rantango since now his clones have merged and transformed into Zorakuten. Even with two Hashiras and Gainer fighting against Zorakuten, without the hunter's mark, the chances of victory are extremely low. But when the Hashiras tell Ben to find and decapitate Rantango's original clone, Ben, in order to protect his new friends, transforms into the Will-o'-the-Wisp. Next, he uses his supreme form, capable of controlling and firing much more powerful blue flames. Incinerating Zorakuten's dragons, and with his mutant seeds, he creates powerful roots and plants that hold back the wooden dragons, allowing the hunters to go after the original clone of Rantango. And so that Zorakuten doesn't use any tricks against the hunters like firing lightning or sonic screams, Ben launches blue projectiles that multiply and explode, releasing a gas capable of putting the Oni to sleep. When Mitsuri finds Rantango and decapitates him, the village is safe. However, Muzan, becoming more aware of the powers of the Omnitrix, decides to go after Ben 10 at the Hunters Corporation. To obtain his watch, he sends all the hunters to the Infinite Castle, putting each Hashira face to face with their respective opponent. And many epic battles will happen from here on, but many deaths as well. So will Ben be able to stop them this time? Before I tell you, I need to remind you to like the video and subscribe to the channel with the notification bell on to receive your powerful Omnitrix. Once that's done, look, Ben falls into Doma's room, where he would have to face the second, stronger Upper Moon alongside Shinobu. Kasa was defeated. And to defeat the powerful Ice Oni, nothing better than a fire alien, right? Especially an alien capable of literally spitting lava. So Ben transforms into NRG, shooting powerful solar rays at the Oni. However, Doma has an absurd speed, and as we know, because of the armor, NRG is very slow. And when Doma summons his Ice Buddhist statues, Ben transforms to break them with his powerful and massive strength. Until Doma decides to summon his Ice Clones to fight against the Hunters. And Ben decides to limit his movements, transforming into Ultimate NRG, firing a sequence of missiles, destroying all of Doma's clones and restricting his movements with huge explosions, giving Shinobu an opening to poison him, and right after, Tomioka manages to decapitate him. Now that's a great combination. That's my favorite duo. When the hunters set out to face Muzan, they come across Gyome, Sanemi, Mutiru, Tanjiro, Zui, and Genya. They're fighting against Upper Moon 1. Kokushibo, the strongest Upper Moon, and the other Hashiras, where are they? Notice that the best strategy here for Muzan is to separate the Hashiras as much as possible so that he can recover from Tamayo's poison. So, the rest of the Demon Slayers would be scattered, fighting against the thousands of demons throughout the Infinity Castle. In this fight with Kokushibo, Ben decides to turn things around. None other than Friagem, an alien capable of becoming intangible and freezing the demons. However, when he freezes Kokushibo so the Hashiras can decapitate him, the strength of Upper Moon 1 is infinitely superior to the other upper rank demons that Ben had faced before. So, Kokushibo easily manages to break free from the ice that Ben put him in, forcing Ben to resort to desperate measures. He then transforms into the Supreme Frost, which has ice so strong that it burns. And this time he would create a tremendous mountain of ice around Kokushibo. So fast that the Oni wouldn't be able to break free, giving Gyome, the strongest Hashira, the chance to decapitate the Oni. Once they defeat Kokushibo and Nakimi, the Infinity Castle collapses, causing the hunters to come face to face with Muzan. And in this battle, Muzan explains to Ben that it's impossible for him to return to his world and that now his Omnitrix will belong to him. However, as we know, Ben has complete faith in his friends and says that they will find him and help him get back home. And besides that, obviously, he has to brag that many have already tried to take his Omnitrix, but none have succeeded. And before Muzan can even do anything against Ben, he transforms into the giant. And to paraphrase Ben, Muzan is about to get a taste of the big guy. And to make sure he's going to win, the king of the Onis, Ben, transforms into his ultimate form, becoming dozens of times faster and stronger. Before Muzan could react, Ben fires a beam at Muzan, completely disintegrating him, not even giving the king of the Onis a chance to make any move. And here's a detail. In this story, no one died thanks to Ben. 10. The savior of the universe and now the savior of the world of Demon Slayer. Thus the battle against the Onis ends with the hunter's victory. And Paradox arrives in the Demon Slayer universe, coming to get Ben, saying that Vilgax is out there loose causing trouble. Finally, we've reached the most powerful version of Ben, where he has the ultimate Omnitrix, the strongest version of the Omnitrix currently, which is capable of selecting the right alien for the right moment, not to mention what he has now. Aliens that can literally create the sun in the palm of their hand, and aliens that can completely change gravity, so with aliens this powerful, can Ben save everyone from their imminent death in Demon Slayer? Because after all, will he really be able to help them a lot? But after all, how did Ben 10 Omniverse end up in Demon Slayer? Before I tell you, take this moment and smash the like button down below. Just like Ben, hit your Omnitrix to transform, and only those who are subscribed to the channel can be worthy of receiving an ultimate Omnitrix. So, if I were you, I wouldn't just stand there. I would subscribe to the channel right now. Don't forget to become a member too, because members can have their video suggestions made as quickly as possible. Not to mention the other benefits that the members club offers. Ben was fighting against a powerful enemy alongside his newest partner, Plumber Hulk, and this enemy built a dimensional weapon. To send Ben through another dimension, he manages to do it, and by teleporting Ben to another universe, Ben falls into the world of Demon Slayer, and he was in his Shock Squatch form. And as soon as Ben sees Inosuke being attacked by the father, the spider demon, he uses his powerful lightning bolts to electrocute the Oni and save Inosuke. Until Tomioka arrives to decapitate the father, the spider demon, mistaking Ben for an Oni as well. He attacks Ben in every way. However, his watch turns him back into a human again. And with that, Tomioka, the most famous in the universe, who has already saved him countless times, finds it really strange. After all, since when could a human turn into an Oni, or better yet, into an alien? Tomioka says he will talk to Ben later. At the moment, he needs to stop an Oni that is taking innocent lives, and as a hero, Ben couldn't allow such a thing. He transforms into XLR-8 and runs toward the Oni, quickly passing Tomioka. Finally reaching Tanjiro, who was in trouble, Rui was about to shred Tanjiro with his webs. Then Ben arrives and saves him at super speed. In the end, Tomioka decapitates Rui and takes Ben with the hunters to the Hashira meeting. While there, Ubu and Nashiki talk to Ben after understanding what the Omnitrix was about. He explains that Muzan, the king of the Onis, might be able to help Ben return to his world. After all, there are Onis with unique powers, and Muzan has knowledge of every Oni under his control. So Ben joins the Oni Hunters Corporation. Boarding the Mugen train with Rengoku and the others, he comes across Onis attacking the passengers. Ben quickly transforms into Bullfrog and saves the civilians with his frog tongue, while Rengoku decapitates the distraction Oni sent by Enmu, causing the hunters to lower their guard and fall into Enmu's Kekijutsu. And when they wake up, Enmu has already merged with the train, and once again attacking the train's passengers, Ben transforms into the Stinkfly. And this alien, my friends, is insanely overpowered. He can develop various toxins inside his stomach and release them. Just so you have an idea, he can basically create any gas he wants, from laughing gas to gases that attract giant evil aliens. In other words, literally any gas. And what does Ben do? He creates a gas that spreads through the train cars, a gas capable of corroding the skin of Onis. So Nezuko, who hides in her box after Ben's warning, is safe. However, Enmu can't do the same, and his skin starts to corrode, with his tentacles being stopped by the rot. With that, Rengoku has the freedom to move forward directly with Tanjiro and Inosuke to Enmu's neck, and finally Rengoku decapitates the Oni's neck. Then appears the house, the Upper Moon 3, to defeat the Demon Slayers. Will Ben 10 be able to defeat the house and save Rengoku from his terrible death? My friends, for sure that Watch Ben has gives him the best alien for every situation. And this situation would call for Ben to transform into Upgrade. Then he could merge with the train and turn into a Megazord. Despite the size, Ben still wouldn't be able to keep up with the speed of the house. However, he would be able to make Rengoku take less damage, especially since he could fire missiles and even beams of light. However, the house proves to be extremely strong and resistant. Remember that in the Infinity Castle arc, the house was able to break Tomioka's sword in his hand. Exactly then, he would be able to surpass Ben's Megazord in every aspect. But now, the best alien for the situation that's about to come would be none other than Gravatak. Maybe Ben, seeing Akasa's fighting style, would ask for someone more brawler-like, such as Humongosaur or Four Arms. Yeah, it's not always what he wants or thinks he needs. While Rengoku follows Akasa's powerful moves, Ben enters the battle simply smashing Akasa against the ground, making it impossible for Onidi to do anything. Precisely because this alien is able to control gravity, everyone looks at Ben and sees that he is powerful, and they are surprised by Chan. Without hands, Rengoku takes the opportunity to decapitate Akasa. However, as we know, the upper moons, especially from rank 3 onwards, are able to regenerate their heads. Unless they give up on such a feat, in this case, Akasa wouldn't give up and would regenerate going after the hunters. However, Ben plays with the house just as he plays with gravity, while Rengoku can only watch and lift the house up high. As the sun rises, Oni's body is completely disintegrated by the sun, which means one upper moon down and one Hashira saved, except for Kyojuro Rengoku. Moving on to the entertainment district, Ben transforms into the beast alien, able to find Oni, who was causing the disappearances with his scent. With the help of Uzu and Tanjiro, they manage to decapitate Daki immediately. Then, as Gyutaro appears, the hunters are struck by his poison, but what now? Only Tengen has a high resistance to the poison, so what will they do? Watch and see. Ben transforms again into the Stinky One, and mixing his gases, he releases a powerful antidote against Gyutaro's poisons, spreading a tremendous cloud of smoke. Finally, Ben switches aliens and transforms into Diamond Head, protecting the hunters with powerful diamond walls, shielding them from both Gyutaro's poisons and Daki's ribbons. But Ben realizes that he needs to defeat both Onis at the same time, so he waits to gather everyone together with his diamond. However, it wouldn't be an easy task, so he comes up with the idea of transforming into Echo Echo to split up and help the hunters. However, he is transformed into the giant, and anyone who thinks that just because this alien is really huge, he's also very slow, is out of luck. In fact, he's one of Ben's fastest aliens, so he can easily keep up with the speed of both Onis. But he grabs both of them with his two hands and crushes them, making a giant meatball. Finally, he throws them against the ground, smashing the Onis. The pressure is so great that the Onis have to completely regenerate their bodies, giving Tanjiro and Uzui the opportunity to run toward the siblings, who are finally together. And at a disadvantage with the opening created, Tanjiro awakens the Slayer mark to decapitate Daki, while Uzui manages to decapitate Gyutaro. And all of this thanks to Ben, and look at that, Tanjiro damaged his sword a lot. So, he would go to the Swordsmith village, accompanied by Ben, who would also like to have an awesome sword to show Hulk and the others. Arriving at the village, it is attacked by Gyoko's and Rantengo's demon fish, and Rantengo appears in the hunter's room. But Mutiru quickly cuts off his head, activating his Kekijutsu, causing his dangerous clones to appear and go after Urogi. The Joy clone blasts Mutiru away with a powerful gust of wind, and when the Anger clone was about to unleash his powerful lightning and thunder against the hunters, Ben stops them by recharging himself, or rather by absorbing all the lightning with feedback, and thanks to that he sends the powerful lightning back at the Anger clone. However, there are still other clones running toward Ben, who transforms into his form. As Humongosaur, Urogi's winds aren't strong enough to move Humongosaur from his spot, and not even the Spear of the Sadness clone is able to hurt him. Ben quickly grabs both clones and crushes their heads, while the clone that grew wings unleashes his powerful sonic scream against the hunters. He is defeated by gunfire from Genya, who had arrived, showing a great threat to the Onis. They decide to transform into Zorokuten to deal with Ben. However, before the hunters even need Mitsuri's help, Ben transforms into Shama, who sets Zorokuten's wooden dragons on fire. The Oni, nervous, tries everything against Ben, but he is very skilled with the Shamas and dodges everything while incinerating the Oni and his wooden dragons. While Zorokuten is being humiliated, Tanjiro manages to decapitate the mini Rantengo, and taking advantage of the early victory, they run to Multiro, who is fighting against Gyoko, or rather, was. But when they find him, he is trapped in his water prison. Tanjiro frees him, and Gyoko still wants to attack our heroes. He uses his demon art of 1,000 slippery slime fish. However, Ben transforms into Mega Eyes, and with powerful laser blasts, he destroys Gyoko's fish, almost hitting him. Gyoko launches dangerous tentacles at Ben. However, Ben transforms into the Arctic Iguana, freezing everything around him, including Gyoko's tentacles, who realizes the danger Ben represents and uses a hybrid fish form. Getting a mega power up here, Ben changes his transformation again. This time, he transforms into Gravatak, sinking Gyoko into the ground, giving Multiro the opportunity to decapitate Oni. In the end, the village is saved. And it's at this point that Muzan is furious for having lost his upper moons. However, he's also thirsty for power, imagining what kind of power he could have if he acquired Ben's watch. This really reminds me of a villain from Ben 10 Classic, right? Gax? He heads to the corporation with the intention of stealing Ben's watch for himself. However, we should remember that at this point, both good and bad changes have happened. Look, Ben helped save Rengoku and made the battle easier for the hunters in the entertainment district. Uzui would remain in the corporation since he didn't suffer any significant injuries that would make him consider retirement. Those are good points, but now we have to look at the bad points. With Ben's help, both Mitsuri, who didn't arrive to fight against Zorokuten, and Mutiru, who received help from his companions. Both Hashiras didn't have the opportunity to awaken their hunter mark. And as we know, this is a crucial point for the hunter's survival in the Infinite Castle. So would the hunters be able to survive with Ben's help? With that, will no deaths happen in this arc? I must say that I think that's very difficult, because from the moment Muzan pulls everyone into the Infinite Castle, the hunters are separated, and demons from everywhere appear, while some already face their respective opponents, the Upper Moons. Ben needs to take down an absurd amount of demons that come out of the walls of the Infinite Castle. In this case, the best option for Ben is to transform into Hoopa, a jumping grasshopper with an extremely hard head. Crushing every demon around him and moving on, jumping to the next rooms in search of Muzan, who at this moment would be hiding in his cocoon thanks to the poison Tamayo injected into him just before he pulled everyone into the Infinite Castle. Ben comes across the room where the hunters were fighting Kokushibo, the Upper Moon one. At this point, even Multiro, with his mark awakened, had already lost an arm because of an attack from Kokushibo. Ben quickly jumps toward Kokushibo, who is caught off guard and takes a headbutt from Ben, but the demon almost slices Ben completely. He decides to transform into another alien, and it would be none other than Vladat, or rather Batman. This alien of Ben allows him to fly, and he circles around Kokushibo, who throws his powerful moons at Ben. He is caught by a powerful attack from Sanimi, and while praising the hunter's skill, Ben manages to get very close. Close enough to the Oni to look directly into his eyes and hypnotize him as well with 6 eyes. It would be basically impossible for him not to succeed, and yes, this alien is capable of doing that even though he thought it wouldn't be possible to hypnotize him. Because they are under Muzan's control, Ben is able to do this since Muzan is still weak and in his cocoon, thanks to Tamayo's poison. Now, the hunters have gained another powerful ally, at least for now. They head towards Muzan. However, my friends, they come across the room where Shinobu, Rengoku, Tomioka, and Tanjiro were fighting Doma, the Upper Moon 2, who was using all his power against the hunters, and without being able to activate their marks, they would have a hard time at the hands of Doma. Just at the moment when Doma's Ice Buddhist statue was about to crush them, Rengoku Kokushibo intervenes in the fight and completely cuts the statue down, all under Ben's orders. Kokushibo quickly subdues Doma, who is defeated by the higher ranked Oni. Unfortunately, all good things come to an end. Ben, unfortunately, reverts back and Kokushibo becomes furious, charging at the hunters, who are now all united against the Oni despite Kokushibo's insane attacks. Then Ben transforms into the Frightwig, and this alien is capable of instilling fear in anyone who looks at his face. Kokushibo, looking directly at Ben, he is so afraid that he ends up taking his own life. Finally, the hunters run toward Muzan, who is forced to leave his cocoon. Earlier, an epic battle takes place with the hunters giving their all, and thanks to Ben, alive. However, Muzan would not allow things to stay that way, so he would attack with everything he had, and despite the hunters' efforts, they still wouldn't be able to overcome Muzan. Ben transforms into Astrodactyl. His flying abilities and his energy whips are useful for cutting Muzan's tentacles and dodging them, creating openings for the hunters. However, it's all in vain. Muzan's regeneration is insane. He heals in the blink of an eye. Against all attacks, only something that could disintegrate him would be able to defeat him. Ben, wanting to end the battle as soon as possible, transforms into Omnitrix, an alien who has nuclear power in his body and can literally create a sun in his hands. However, Ben knows the power of this alien. So, he asks the hunters to step back, and when they do as Ben asks, he manages to melt Muzan's tentacles with a powerful ball of nuclear energy. Even with Muzan stepping back, Ben can send powerful blasts that seriously injure the Oni. Flying close to Muzan, Ben uses his most powerful attack, Nuclear Victory, completely disintegrating Muzan and thus defeating the king of the Oni, Kibutsuji Muzan, without any losses. Dr. Paradox coincidentally appears to pick up Ben and bring him back home. Once again, Ben proved himself to be a hero, saving everyone from the hands of the terrible king of the Oni. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a big like down below and subscribe to the channel. I picked out this video here which I'm sure you'll like, so go check it out. I'll see you there, otaku.